I'd like to thank everybody who are joining us today for this webinar about the Exchange App Store. I'm Jim Quanci, Senior Director of the Autodesk Developer Network. My team manages the store and, as well as manages the Autodesk Developer Network. Joining us today is Stephen Preston, who heads up Developer Technical Services, works for me, and has quite a lot of expertise around the Exchange App Store. Now, also in the background is Hazel Wood, who is our App Store Manager. Those of you who have apps in the store already have probably run into Hazel at some point or other. So all of us will be on the Q&A live chat, available for questions as we have this presentation. So on top of your screen is a Q&A live chat. Feel free to jump in and ask questions as we go. The other two people on the line who are not talking will do their best to answer your questions. Yeah, I think keep in mind we are recording this session. It will be available later, barring any technical difficulties. I think I'm running about 80% success recording these live meeting webinars, but once in a while it doesn't work out, but I'm pretty hopeful. Stephen, you want to just say hello?
Hello.
Stephen, that's not even saying enough for people to get your British accent.
Sorry, but you did such a good job introducing me. So anyway, I'm here today to do a couple of demos of some new technology, but some new features that are available on the store, which I think would be quite interesting to some of the publishers on the call. Things that people have been asking for a long time, which we're finally delivering to.
Stephen, do project your voice. You're kind of choppy.
Okay, sorry. I'll move the phone closer to me. I'm working on speakerphone.
That's better. Okay, so quick. Those of you who are already using Exchange, you'll know some of this. Those who are new to the Exchange App Store, I'm going to go through this relatively quickly. So, the objective, the strategy from the beginning was an iPhone App Store experience. Customers are getting used to that kind of easy, simple experience. And people are annoyed by the normal desktop software, install, licensing. They're just annoyed by that experience. So quick, easy, delightful, free apps, trial apps, fee, so paid apps. Absolutely great way for software developers to find new customers, around the world, and to sell your products. And, the store's been out about 2.5 years now, and it is really starting to get some traction on the sales side. So again, Exchange, large growing user base. I'll talk a little bit. I'm going to show you some statistics in a minute on the numbers of users. Again, global reach. Customers really are trusting it. It's really easy. As a side note, I am in Denver today. I've given a presentation about the store to 350 sales engineers who work at Autodesk resellers. And I always do a raise your hands if you use Exchange, and 80% of them use Exchange on a regular basis. It was quite a pleasant surprise to see that the ecosystem is really engaging around Exchange.
Yeah, it's interesting, Jim. I got a call today from someone from the product support team saying they had a very large customer who was very keen to make a bulk purchase on the store just this morning. So things are growing.
Speak up. You're getting a little choppy again, Stephen.
Yeah, I was just saying that we had an enterprise priority customer this morning. Their product support representative called me up and said, hey, we got this guy who wants to make a really big purchase from a store. It's a small app and he wants to buy hundreds of seats of it for his own company.
Love it. Okay, you can see some quotes here. This functionality is desperately needed in Civil 3D. You'll save the $25 in productivity and half a day of pipe modeling. And the developer, Steve, he's extremely responsive, worked out the bugs, A+ app, A+ developer. See the next one, clean, simple, and very effective at working through. It looks like it's cleaning out DWGs instead of purge. I don't know how you can use the keynoting system in Revit without the keynote manager. So, there's a lot of happy customers. And that means returning customers. And that means opportunity for partners. Just a little bit statistics, visitors to the store per quarter. The numbers are climbing. We had a little bit of a slowdown in Q4. I think that's the Christmas effect. But we're back on a good growth ramp here in Q1. We're breaking through over 500,000 visitors a quarter shortly now. So the customers are definitely coming, and they're coming back. Downloads a quarter. Look at this number. Now, this is definitely still in the acceleration stage. So notice over one in four customers who go to Exchange download an app. So we're getting great download volume. The customers have learned to trust it. Now, maybe more importantly, paid apps, sales of paid apps. Now, I'll start by saying you can see we've broken through 1,000 paid app sales per quarter. That number is an order or 2 orders of magnitude lower than where we want to be, but the trajectory is there. The growth is there. There's acceleration there. The numbers are going up. Now, for those of you who are publishers today or thinking of publishing, I need your help. Right now, 60% of the apps in the store are free. And the thing is, when you have that many free apps, people using the store, they look hard and they spend a whole lot of time looking what they can find for free before they consider purchasing. And too much free does leave you with a bit of a shareware kind of mentality, or it could leave people believing this is about shareware versus high-quality commercial software. So what I think is appropriate is maybe a third of the apps on the store are free. I believe every publisher should have a great, simple, useful, high-quality free app to help you find new customers, to help you build trust, but you shouldn't overdo it. You know, the rest of your app should be trials and or paid. We need to start moving the store from free and a lot of $1 and $2 apps to more like $10, $25, $100, $500 apps. We need to start moving in that direction. So I encourage everybody who has apps in the store, absolutely do a free one, but also do something of significant cost, of significant value. That's going to help us all long term as we move the store from what's been a great marketing tool for many publishers, but turning into a really great sales conversion tool, closing tool. What else? The number of apps in the store, we've got good acceleration there too. Again, this is important because it keeps customers coming back. It makes them think about Exchange, you know, as soon as they have a problem, not, oh, somebody reminded me to look at Exchange. Looking at Exchange becomes a reflex whenever they have an issue they need to solve. So we need to keep growing the apps, and we're absolutely moving in that right direction. What else? We're still growing the number of stores. For example, we just opened a Navisworks store a month or two back. It's pretty new. So we're not done yet in the number of stores. Though I will say we're almost where we want to be. The interesting part is you will later this year start to see stores for web services. So it's selling a web service to run on an Autodesk web service. So that'll be coming. But again, having this number of stores is definitely helping train customers, users, when they have a problem, go to the store first, whatever the Autodesk product they have is. There's a good chance there'll be something there that can help them with a pressing issue. We've got a growing number of big successes and a really variety of successes of publishers. You know, the partner in the Midwest of the United States who started with some free Revit apps, made contacts with some of the biggest architectural design firms in the world, has converted them into customers, is now starting to sell paid apps in the store, while at the same time they've gotten some very large custom software development deals from some of these large customers they didn't have a relationship with before. In Central Europe, we've got partners with Revit apps, Civil 3D apps, AutoCAD apps, Vault apps that are having great success, reaching customers outside their regions, outside the area that they've been talking to. You know, these are partners who've been in business for years and years and hadn't successfully reached out beyond their region, who are now doing that. And they're now making contacts with some of the biggest Autodesk customers in the world and other parts of the world. So taking hard work they've done over the years, packaging it up slickly, using Exchange apps to create warm relationships, and then creating bigger sales based on that. Absolutely working. Had a discussion with a partner in India who has a machining app, you know, an NC, numerical control type app. And this isn't a free or a $1 or $2 app. This one's a little more on the pricier side. Who's having good success selling that NC app. People who work with machines, They used to buy machine tools, which can cost several hundred or several $1,000s, to drop $100, $200 on a simple piece of software to do some very simple machining, create some basic NC code. They just do it. It's just not a big deal. And then another publisher of ours in New Zealand, small operation. Again, when they started their business and in the first few years of their business, they were really selling locally, and now they've made contacts with some of the biggest design firms in the world who are now their happy customers. And they're having a pretty delightful time at it, working with these big customers that they read about in magazines, but it's like, well, we'll never do business with them. But through the App Store, they've created these relationships that are really starting to create significant revenue, giving them a chance to grow their business. The other one Stephen mentioned, we had an interesting, I think this is the second time I've seen this, where a publisher with a low-cost app, $5 app, $10 app, gets an email from an enterprise account who wants several hundred seats and says, we used your app, we've got several people using it, and at this $5 or $10 a piece, we've decided it's time to go company-wide, and let's do a deal for a company-wide license. What more can you ask for? Both from all of a sudden it's an order with a significant amount of money, but it's also an opportunity to do more. Because with large accounts, they have specialized needs. They're trying to create a competitive advantage with the software you develop. So invariably, they're going to come back and ask for help tuning it for their business.
So Tim, I think it's probably worth just re-emphasizing, the graph you showed of sales in the store, that is direct app sales. And, we expect that to grow very, very significantly. But, all the stories you just talked about are about people who've made a lot of money, not actually from the actual cost of the app. It's from having that presence and that publicity in the store. So although that paid app graph, doesn't look particularly exciting right now, although the slope on the curve is very exciting, there's people who are making hundreds of thousands of dollars from business which has been generated just by having their app on the store, even a free app.
Yeah, absolutely, Stephen. But I will enforce, and you're going to hear a little bit about this a little bit more later, you need a great app. If you put a mediocre app out, people are going to think you're mediocre. If you put a great app out that has great value, is very easy to use, is rock solid, people will reach out to you, because the way they know you is through your app. If you put out a mediocre app, they think you're a mediocre company. If you put out a great app, they go, wow, this is somebody I want to work with. And that's becoming more and more important, because there's a few apps that are making significant money right now, but when you look at the apps and you go, well, what's the secret? The secret is obvious. They are great apps. Again, I'm at this conference yesterday, and there's resellers talking about some of the apps in the store that they were like, oh, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. My customer absolutely loves it. This one bailed me out of a real pinch. Our users, our customers, our resellers are figuring out, what the best apps are. So with that, we want to talk about what's new. That's really what this webinar is about, what's new. So some of the improvements we're making, we have added quantity capabilities. Up to about 2 months ago, a customer could only buy one app at a time. Clearly, if you're a larger company, you bought that first app, you really liked it, and you want to buy more, you can do that. I think we have a maximum right now of 200 copies you can buy through the store. And we're starting to see quantity purchases through the store. So a way to grow the store as a revenue generator. Okay, the other thing we've done, and this is going to take some thought from people, and I think some planning from many of you, is about implementing term, allowing you to sell things by rental, by the month. So here's what we think the opportunity is. Many of you have more expensive applications that might cost $1,000 or $2,000 or 5,000 euros. And buying that through an app store, people are nervous about that. On the other hand, if you take that same app and you make it rental, so by the month, where the customer only needs to put out maybe $150 for a month or $100 for a month or $200 for a month, they're much more likely to do that first month, get the experience, see how good it is. And then the store is set up to keep charging them month by month by month. Or, the customer will decide they really like it and they'll reach out and want to buy the perpetual product. So what we're encouraging you to do is take your higher cost perpetual products, put the perpetual product in the store, but also put a term-based monthly rental of your product in the store, as well as a trial version. We think with a trial, a monthly term rental, and a perpetual, we're really going to be able to change behavior and really start driving significant revenue for you through the store, where the money walks in. And we need you to come with us on this ride. And Stephen's going to talk a little bit more a little later about term. I also think with some of you we're going to be having discussions around, what's the way to manage the licensing, which we'll talk some more about. The other thing is giving you the ability to update application information and pricing information in real time. Anybody here who's a publisher knows, if you want to make one tweak to anything, that tweak has to go through a review cycle at Autodesk, and that could take a week or 2 or 3, or if we're backlogged, 4, which I apologize for when that happens. We are about to turn the switch where existing apps in the store, you can change anything except the app itself, and that will happen in real time. So, maybe you want to do a promotion for a week or a month, and you want to change the price for a short period of time. Maybe you want to change the description of an app to test. Should I talk about the app this way, or should I talk about it another way? Will that impact the number of downloads and the number of purchases? So we're going to make it very easy for you to go in and make changes to your app in the way you present your app to customers. Now,
Sorry to interrupt. This is Hazel. Actually, we went live a few hours ago. I just heard from the publisher saying it was great. I was surprised at how fast it happened.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Hazel. I'll tell you, we've been talking the last few days here on whether we'd be able to say this was live or not, so that's great to hear it is. And again, those of you who are publishers, I'm sure you're like, it's either about time or thank you. Okay, so with that, I want to talk a little bit about what's coming soon. So things are not implemented this minute, but again, it's to get you thinking about what you're going to do with what we're doing. One of the things is adding purchase order support. Now, the statistics are 74% of all business-to-business transactions are done with purchase orders. We've been using PayPal this first 2.5 years. It was very quick and easy for us to implement. It's quick and easy for you to deal with. So that worked as we got started. But for us to move to the next stage for the sale of more expensive apps, for quantity sales, for a more sophisticated delivery mechanism, we need to be able to accept purchase orders. And that is absolutely coming. It's going to happen within a few months. I suspect most of you, if not all of you, also do purchase orders on the side. But be prepared. We're going to add purchase order capability through the store, and you'll learn more about the details of that as we go on. The other thing we're going to add is more payment options. So again, PayPal has been nice, but there have been issues. And I think many of you know the PayPal experience is a little quirky. PayPal tries to get people to pay by their PayPal account instead of credit card, and it's not always the smoothest experience. So we're going to create a more seamless, feels like a single experience instead of what today is kind of a punch out to PayPal. And as part of doing that, we're going to add many more payment options. Again, in terms of, hey, I just want to pay with a credit card, I can just do that. PayPal will still be there, but we'll have a lot more options. Bank transfers, wire transfers. I know in some parts of the world, that's how businesses want to pay. Electronic check. There's some really funny ones here that I am not familiar with, but I hear in some parts of the world they're popular, like Skrill. Obviously, purchase orders I've mentioned already. I think the addition of purchase order support is going to be a really biggie for everyone here. Ucash, Cashew, Bolito, WebMoney. Look at the last one, Alipay. So whether you're a publisher in China or whether you want to sell to China, Alipay is the way to do it. 80% of all online money transactions in China are through Alibaba, and that's Alipay. And they've got that rig to work, including, how do I put it, all the interesting government rules you run into. Now, you may be going, so how are we going to do all this? So a big part of it is moving our payment processing from just PayPal to a company called BlueSnap. BlueSnap is a large payment processor, worldwide basis, does international, has very sophisticated capabilities, things like helping people handle VAT. They were the ones who will enable us to take things like Alipay. They also provide this ability. Again, they become behind the scenes. So instead of PayPal being out front, it'll actually be the Exchange App Store being out front, and behind the scenes will be BlueSnap doing the transactions. Now, for those of you who are getting payments through PayPal today, that's not going to go away immediately when we move to BlueSnap, but you will need to create a BlueSnap account. Again, those of you using PayPal today, went through going to the PayPal website, opening an account. You may have worked with Hazel. We will be putting out detailed instructions on how you go about creating a BlueSnap account that will be hooked into the Exchange App Store. And again, this is the way we're going to be able to deliver PO support. Now, BlueSnap also has sophisticated APIs for those of you who want to hook it into your CRM systems, your sales systems. So I'd say we're going from, we've been kind of using PayPal for, it's like being in grammar school as we've been learning, and it's now time to graduate into secondary school, into high school, and we're going to go there with BlueSnap. Or maybe I should say it'll be more like university. But this is coming. It's not going to happen next week, but within the next month or two or three, you are going to see this happen. I encourage you, go to BlueSnap.com. Check out what they do. They have interesting things. They have the ability to give you things like discount codes. So your favorite customer, you could give them a discount code to maybe offer them a 10% discount. Or you can get discount codes that have a limited time offer to get people to purchase now instead of later. They also have some licensing ability where you could potentially hook up your licensing system to deliver license codes and stuff in a real-time basis. So there'll be a lot more capability that will come with BlueSnap. Now, I will say more capability always adds a little bit, well, it's going to add some learning, adds a little bit more complexity because you have more options. So over the next 2 or 3 months, we're all going to be learning how this works. But again, I think that key, and I'm going to go back to being able to take purchase orders, is really going to increase not just the quantity of orders, but I think the value, the price, the amount of actually revenue is going to increase by, I expect, at least an order of magnitude due to this switch. Okay, now we're going to move on to long-term planning.
Jim, can I just interrupt you for a second? There's a couple of questions on the console. It's probably worth you answering in audio because I think probably some other people have the same questions.
Somebody's got a double echo, so just be aware. Peter, if you know who it is, if you can tell if it's Stephen Preston or myself or Hazel, or it may be you're getting audio through both your telephone and your computer, and you need to mute your computer. So you might try one of those things. About payment, we would like to give our subscription customers some advantages. Is that possible? Again, when we make this switch to BlueSnap, you will be able to create discount codes that you manage. So when the customer goes through the payment process, they will have the opportunity to use that discount code that you give them. So you can give them their own private discount code that gives them like, a 10% discount or whatever you think is appropriate. The other thing which is interesting is BlueSnap has the capability for you to create affiliates. So an affiliate being someone who promotes your apps on your website, and that when they go to the Exchange App Store, there's a cookie there that gets passed, and that person then gets a commission from you to them for forwarding that customer to Exchange in an acquisition happening on Exchange. And when I say this, I'm absolutely thinking about the 2,000 Autodesk value-added resellers around the world who you could decide to make them part of your sales force by allowing them to be affiliates and getting an affiliate kind of commission. Okay.
There was another question, Jim, which disappeared, which was, I can't remember who it was asked it, but they were saying, you know, all of these enhancements you're making, obviously, they cost money for Autodesk to make these enhancements on a store. So what are our plans in terms of charging commission on apps at the moment?
Okay, what's Autodesk plans on starting commission? As we said from the beginning, the time may come when we will take as much as 30% commission. That is not happening now. That is not happening in the next few months. That will not happen until there's significant revenue for you. No point in us taking money from you until the revenue through sales through the store is, you know, is largish, is meaningful. And will we actually take 30%? I don't know. We've been having discussions about, you know, what's appropriate, 10%, 20%. We have not made that decision yet. But for now, it's free, and take advantage of it. We recognize you, our publishers, are making significant investments, packaging your products, polishing your products, building new products appropriate for the store. That's taking you significant investment to do. So, you know, we're not interested in taking your money at this time. But that day will come. But we're not going to do it until it's meaningful for all of us. And we will have a discussion around it. You won't be blindsided. You know, we will give you ample warning when we might do that, when we make the decision on when it's going to happen. Okay? And with that, I'm going to move on to long-term planning. So things for you to think about. One is simple unified license management. It's becoming clear as revenue through sales in the App Store increase, being able to manage customer licenses and being able to manage large numbers of licenses, and dealing with customers who manage licenses through things like Active Directory and LDAP. Now, some of our more sophisticated publishers, you've built your own license management scheme, your own security scheme around your apps. That's great. But for the smaller publisher who's really focused on building great apps and you know, becoming an expert in software licensing is not something they want to do, we are pursuing creating a simplified licensing scheme that you can use. Kind of like we have a simplified EULA, end user license agreement, that most of you use. The other part of this is, you know, for the smaller, low-cost apps, we really want the customer experience for license management to be the same. So they learn one, and then most of the apps they get use the same licensing scheme, the same licensing mechanism that's integrated with the Exchange Store, because the customer doesn't want to manage 50 different licensing schemes. They just don't want to do it. So we are developing longer term a simple, unified license management scheme. I don't want you to not create your own license management because this is coming. On the other hand, if you're a smaller developer, if you can be patient with us, we're going to help you do this in a relatively easy way. And with that, I'm going to pass this off to Stephen, who's going to get into some, he's going to talk about Entitlement API and some simple copy protection apps you can implement now, and you don't need to wait for us. You take it from here, Stephen?
Thank you, Jim. So what I want to I'm going to demonstrate two things today. The first one is what we call the Entitlement API. And this is our first step towards a copy protection system for all of your applications. As Jim said, eventually we want to basically give you a turnkey system, something you can just embed in your own code, and it will just work. But as a first step towards that, we're basically giving you what you need to implement a very simple check so that when your app is running, it can actually verify that the user on that machine who is using your app is someone who actually downloaded the app from the Exchange Store. So one of the big concerns that certain publishers have had is, well, someone could buy my app and just give it to all of his friends, and without a copy protection system, I can't stop that. So this is a way that you can actually make sure that the person who has downloaded your app, even if it's a free app, you may have reasons for wanting people to download it themselves. It will check it'll basically it'll phone home to the Exchange store and say, does this person have permission to use my app? Did they actually download it and pay for it? And if the answer comes back yes, then your application can carry on working. If it comes back no, then you can handle that appropriately. So I'm going to do a demo now. I'm going to switch over to my desktop. This is always a little bit risky, doing a live demo early in the morning when you've not had your coffee, but we'll see how it goes. So share my desktop. Okay, so hopefully everybody can now see my desktop, and you should be able to see AutoCAD 2015 running. Jim, can you confirm that you can see that?
Absolutely. Looks good.
Okay, so I've already got an app running. I've actually got Visual Studio running in the background. I'm debugging this app. So I've got a simple app, and it's just got a very simple command line command called Start My App. So I'm going to run that. And it's very simple. It doesn't really do anything. It just demonstrates the concept. So this is an application which is using the Entitlement API. And it's telling me here that I need to log in with my Autodesk ID to start. And what that's actually saying is that up here in the corner of most of our products, in fact all of our products I think, you have this sign-in bar which allows you to sign in using your Autodesk ID. And this is, in AutoCAD, how this application actually hooks into our system, because you want the person who bought the app to sign in with their Autodesk ID, which is the same Autodesk ID they use to buy the application with. So if I haven't signed in, I can just respond to that. And you can see the text here has changed saying, please make sure you sign in. So now I'm going to just go and sign in. This brings up the up my Autodesk ID. And so you see now in AutoCAD, this has actually told me now that I'm signed in. So now when I click this button, it's actually going, I have this, I've written a function here, check entitlement, so it's just making a call to this function. This is a .NET application, obviously. Making a call to this function in my code, which in turn is just making a very simple call to our Entitlement API. So this is a REST API. It's a very, very simple web service call to the Exchange store. In this case, in .NET, I'm using a client called REST Sharp. And when that returns, basically, it's returning true or false. And in this case, it's returning true because it's basically said, yes, this person has an entitlement to buy the application. And so when I run this now, it's now enabled this button, so now I can actually use the application properly. So in this case, that's the full functionality of the application. Oops. So now I just need to find out how to go back to my slide. Sorry about the slowness, it's navigating between live meeting. So a couple of small comments about the application. So I'm having some mouse problems here, it's not clicking properly. There we go. Well, first of all, the simplest product to use this in is AutoCAD, because there's a very simple way in AutoCAD of extracting the customer's Autodesk ID for your application to check against our store. You'll find that in our other applications, there's a slight extra hoop you have to jump through in your own application, in that rather than querying the AutoCAD sign-in status, you actually your application needs to ask the user to sign in themselves separately from a product. We'll have that fixed probably in the next year's releases of the products for the other ones. So some best practice for this, you have to allow for the various facts. Firstly, you have to allow for the fact that the customer may have made a bulk purchase. As I say at the bottom here, the Entitlement API doesn't yet support bulk purchase, by which I mean when someone makes a bulk purchase, one person with one Autodesk user ID is buying, say, 200 copies of your application and distributing it throughout the organization. And that means that there are 199 people in that organization who are not signing in with that person's Autodesk ID. So be aware that that's not required. The alternatives there is we either have to require that as a one-off time the person who bought the app signs in on each computer, or you need to provide an authorization backdoor. And we are working on this to flesh it out, but we felt that this functionality was so important that we should ship this before we had the bulk support in place. But with that in mind, you also have to allow for the fact that sometimes the user might want to use the product when they're not connected to the internet, or there may be some small issue that you find that's causing our Entitlement API to say they're not entitled when they actually are. So the first thing is always allow a grace period for this application. So if your application checks that they're entitled to the app, don't immediately disable the application. Give them a warning. Put the application into kind of 10-day trial mode or something and say, hey, there's a problem checking your entitlement. Please contact me, the publisher, and we'll sort it out. In the meantime, I'm going to work for this number of days, and the clock is ticking now. And similarly, for the same reason, we recommend that you provide a backdoor so that you can, for example, send a special activation code to customers so that they can, if for some reason they don't have the network connectivity, they can still activate the application and make it work. Now, we also recommend that you don't check for the same reason, internet connectivity. We recommend you don't actually check the entitlement on every launch. Assume that when somebody's authorized that computer once, that they are always going to be using that computer. And you can store a little cookie somewhere on the hard drive or in a registry so that that particular user, when your application runs again, you can say, okay, yeah, this user has signed in before. And maybe you'll let it run for 30 days before you do the next check, or maybe you'll just let it run forever. Okay, so that's a very quick overview of the API. My other request to you is nobody has used this fully yet, so we don't have any publishers have yet started using this. So we are looking for early adopters. And because if you do use this, you'll be one of the first people to do so. We really want to hold your hand while you're doing it. So if you would like to use this API, please let me know, and I will make sure that somebody in my team contacts you and helps you through the process of setting up your code to call the API and talk you through the process of what to expect when the API is running. And between us, we'll get your application up and running with this API and make sure that any problems that you find that we haven't documented, that we can very quickly help you solve them so that you're not wasting your time thrashing away. We do have some information already. So if you look at these URLs here, this is one of our ADN dev blogs. Daniel Du from my team has written a series of articles showing how to use this Entitlement API already. So you can go there for initial information, but please do let us know if you're planning to use this so that we can help you.
Stephen, I have a question here from someone. So this entitlement, will this work with prior to 2015 versions, 2014, 2013?
I'm going to say certainly for 2014, possibly not 2013 on AutoCAD. Well, actually, if you choose to get your application to log in itself rather than using the in-product authorization, then it will work for any version at all. For AutoCAD, if you're actually using the functionality available in the AutoCAD product to query the user ID, I believe that's from 2014 onwards.
Okay, thank you.
So yes, it may be that for different versions of the application, of the product, your application may behave very slightly differently. And that's one of the little quirks we want to help you to iron out. We don't want you to have to solve all of those problems on your own. But basically, yes, it can work for every single product and every single version that the Exchange store supports now. It's just a bit like, in Revit, for example, you need a different version of your application anyway between different Revit versions. So it's the same idea, really.
Okay, got another question here. If the app is set to verify the Autodesk login, what happens if they don't have internet access?
Well, that's why I'm saying that you have to assume that if they've just downloaded the app from the store that they do have internet access. But that is why I'm suggesting that you do provide this backdoor in your application so that you can send an activation code to someone who's having problems connecting on the internet. If they're in some place where they don't have connectivity and it's an emergency and they suddenly had to reinstall the app or something, or if they're in a very secure environment where their CAD manager has internet access but nobody else in the company does, and they've got a firewall blocking all of their web
Keep
traffic.
speaking up, Stephen. You started to fade a little bit.
Okay, so did you hear that okay? Basically, that's why you need to provide an authorization backdoor and why you should not refuse to run if at one particular instance you can't access the internet to check the entitlement.
Okay, I've got another wild one for you. And I think we don't know yet. Somebody wants to know if an entitlement capability will work for Lisp and compiled Lisp.
Actually, in AutoCAD, well, as long as you are able to hook into a module which can make a REST API call, so as long as you can basically make an HTTP call from your application, yes. So in the case of, I confess I'm not a Lisp expert. I don't know if there is a module for Lisp that will enable a REST API. You can, of course, hook in a .NET module into your Lisp application to expose a Lisp function that you can call. So if you have a Lisp function, yes, give it a go and tell us. Let's work together, and we can actually develop a simple module that we can then pass on to everybody else who's using Lisp that will allow you to, basically compile that module, put it into your own application, and then you don't have to worry about that, and we'll provide that for you. So yes, it can work, but you may have to write a little .NET module which we can help you with.
Cool.
But basically, any API which allows you to make a REST API call will work.
I suspect some of the people on the line are going to have to look up REST.
Yeah. Well, if you can make an HTTP call, you're good. Okay, any other questions?
I think we should keep going. I'm going to try to answer some of these by text, and we'll go back to them.
Okay.
Well,
the next thing I want to demo,
a little bit ways to go.
Yeah, the next thing I want to demo is something that's actually been there for quite a while. It's this idea of a PayPal IPN notification. And some publishers want to be able to hook PayPal into their own customer relationship management system so that when the payment is actually received from PayPal, they wanted to receive a notification. And PayPal does this automatically, but the Exchange Store was the interface between you and PayPal, and Exchange Store was just eating the notifications. So for quite some time, we've given you the facility in the publisher workflow to provide your own URL that we will forward those notifications to. So we've now taken that one step further, and this links into the term-based applications, the rental model that Jim was talking about earlier. So now, when people set themselves up for subscription, you will receive notifications when someone has set up a subscription for your application or a term-based rental, and you will also receive a notification every time that somebody renews that subscription. So every time a new payment is processed on their application, you will receive a new notification. So you'll be able to track whether a particular user has subscribed to your application and whether they've continued to update their application. And you'll also know when they've cancelled their subscription as well. So I'm going to demonstrate that now, and I'm just going to, I just need to switch back over to my desktop and just make a couple of changes. So let's go back to my desktop. I'm going to stop debugging this application, and I'm going to very quickly load another one. So Jim, you might want to just talk now. I've just got to, for just a couple of seconds, update.
Yeah, I'm here working my way through lots of questions. Like I've got an example, I got a question from Mario, and how do we suggest they distribute patches if they want to fix a bug in their app? I was just answering, you have the email address of everyone who's ever downloaded your app. You can go to the management section of the store, grab all those email addresses, get CSV files, and just send them an email saying, and you know what, this isn't a bad thing. It's a very friendly, hey, we found a bug and here's the fix. And customers, when you proactively tell them about that, that's a great thing. It makes them go, hey, these are people I want to work with, and I'm going to use more of their apps. Now, there may be another question behind that, which is, maybe you don't have a website set up for distributing patches and you don't want to build that. We'll have to have a longer conversation about that. I'm not 100% sure, off the top of my head how I would go about that. I've answered a few questions through the chat now, and a few of them have ended with, give us a ring, let's talk about it. I know a lot of questions around the entitlement APIs. I suspect in a few cases, maybe the code samples we're showing you is enough, but in other cases you may need more, depending on your software development expertise and skills.
Yeah. I think that's a big thing, is don't be shy about asking questions, asking for help, particularly with these new features, because we're writing documentation for them, but we don't know all, until we've used it for a while, we don't know all the little quirks that you might encounter with your particular user base that we hadn't anticipated. And we want you to be successful, because if you're not successful, the store isn't going to be successful. So be very quick to drop us an email, and we can very easily or give us a call, and we can very easily get back to you. So shall I carry on now, Jim?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what I'm demonstrating here is this rental system, these payment notifications. Now, obviously, to receive these notifications, you can't just have a desktop application. You do need to have your own web server that can receive these notifications. You can use this system with a desktop app, but your desktop app then needs to be communicating with your web server to be checking the subscription status for somebody that's using this. So just be aware that, if you've got a desktop-only model and you want to use this, you're going to have to invest in at least a very simple web server which can track these notifications and can monitor whether the user has actually renewed their subscription. And actually, just as an aside before I go into the demo proper, in a way you can just use the simple, if you do have a desktop-only model, instead of these PayPal IPN notifications, you could just use the Entitlement API, because if someone's subscription lapses, then the Entitlement API will then start telling you this person doesn't have an entitlement anymore for a term-based application. But our demonstration is based on the idea that you have a website or a web service, because that just makes it a little bit easier to demonstrate. And this is just a random website. It doesn't really exist. It's on my local machine. And this has been written by someone in my team called Daniel Du, who's based in our Beijing office. And we have this website, and behind the scenes there is the code that can actually process these IPN notifications. And he's also written a very nice emulator, so to make it easy for you to test your applications on your desktop without having to mess around with the Exchange store. He's in the process of writing this and improving it, but you basically got this functionality. We can, this is the app ID of the application that we can test, and this is the email address of the buyer who's actually buying the application. And you can test the simple PayPal notifications, but we're interested in this rental model, this subscription model. And so when I actually subscribe to an to your web service or application, and just click that button, if I've got my breakpoint set up correctly, this is where things will probably fall flat. That was good. Let's try that again. Okay, something's gone wrong with my debugging, so I'm going to have to quickly move to the right piece of code. So let me just go to the...
these things happen, Stephen.
Yeah, I know. It's one of these things, isn't it? It works every time when you practice it. So basically, we have a function which is called the IPN listener. And essentially that deals with the IPN notification. I'm just kind of scrolling down here to, here we go. So we have this IPN listener, which you expose as a URL in a particular way that the Exchange store will call. And when that is called, it basically goes through a process. And actually, I'm just going to try this one more time. For some reason, my breakpoints have somehow got lost. So I'm just going to try this one more time. I'm just going to stop this debugging. I'm going to close Chrome. Let's try this one more time. Okay, so that breakpoint's been enabled, so that's a good start. debug, start new instance. Okay, let's try it again. So there we go. So we have this IPN handler basically, and it does a few things, but the main workflow, I'm not going to step through all of the code, but the main workflow is it receives this IPN notification, and it can decode that notification, and actually I've got some text here where you can see what that notification actually looks like. There's lots and lots of parameters, including information on your app name. There's a transaction ID which helps you link the payments together, so you can actually see that a payment is linked to a particular subscription to your application. You also have the email address, the payer email address here, and you have the important one actually is this buyer Autodesk account. So this is the email address associated with the Autodesk ID of the customer who bought your app. And the thing about that is it enables you to email him information. For example, if it's a website, you could email him his login information. So he will click the buy button on Exchange, and your website will immediately respond by sending him an email to say, okay, thanks for buying this. Here is the information on how you can log in, and here's your accounts and password details. We have a bit of security in there as well. So when you have processed this ID, we also have this concept of verifying the IPN notification. And sorry for the background noise, by the way. Someone's using a chainsaw behind me. And so we have another API on Exchange that you can call back and say, I've just received an IPN payment notification. Please will you, Exchange, confirm to me that you actually sent me this and that somebody is not actually spoofing the notification and trying to cheat me out of my money by pretending that they bought my application when they haven't. Because I know we have spoken to certain publishers who are concerned about that level of security. So basically it checks that. If it receives a response that everything's verified, it will basically send me an email. And again, working with the internet, this is actually just finish the processing. Using the internet, this is a little bit dangerous, but if I go to my test Gmail account and refresh that, okay, I've been testing this beforehand, so I have several versions of the same email. But you actually, when you buy, you get 2 notifications, and we're just sending emails that correspond to each notification. In reality, you probably just send a single email. You get notified a subscription has been set up, and you get notified of the first payment. And you can deal with those as you wish. I'll just delete that. Now I'll go back to my test application, and I'll renew the notification. So I'll just click that button. It goes through the same process again, but this time I would be comparing the subscription ID and the payment notification to see if it's a new subscription or whether it's a renewal payment. And I'll carry on working through that code, and when I go to Gmail, I now get the subscription payment's been received again. So I just sent, just for test purposes, just sent this little email to the user. And then the final piece of testing is obviously, I think you're getting the hang of this by now, when I cancel the subscription, again, the same URL is called, my same IPN listener is being called, and it's processing that, it's checking the packet that it received to see, was this a purchase, was it a renewal, or was it a cancellation, and it responds accordingly. So in this case, when I go back to my Gmail account, and you see here I've responded to the fact that the subscription is cancelled. Now, how you actually deal with the subscription events is really up to you. The workflow we have in mind initially for this is that you will be emailing login information and access information to the customer. But again, we need your feedback on this. So I'm now going to just go back to the PowerPoint.
Hey, this is the first time I saw this code sample work, and I love it.
And this code sample is available now to look at, but it needs improving a little bit, I need to say.
Up on GitHub, Stephen?
So it is, and Daniel's posted some blog postings about this. So that should be on my next slide.
So the other thing, I want to remind people what this is about. Taking an application you sell today that may cost $3,000, $5,000, $10,000, putting it out there as a rental for what might be $100 or $200 for the first month, and enabling people who've been looking at your app are kind of scared of the commitment, and they don't know you that well. That's a lot of money. You're some small firm on the other side of the world, making it very easy for them to, use your app. And then they're in a position to actually go to their management and say, I've been using it for 2 months. I now want to make the commitment. I need to get my boss's approval to buy the perpetual version because it's that much money. But it's being done based on we're already using it, and it only costs, maybe $200 to get that level of confidence in your app and in your company. And I tell you, I know a partner in Italy who implemented Term. It wasn't about Exchange, but it was just taking a higher cost perpetual app, allowed for Term, and got one of the biggest conglomerates in Italy to buy their app after having talked to them for years and just couldn't get them to buy the perpetual version. They went and bought 2 months worth, and then they came back and said, hey, now I can buy the perpetual version. I've got the confidence, and my management has the confidence. Okay, Stephen.
Well, the other use case, of course, is people who want to sell web services. So imagine you've got a desktop application, but which is hooked into a web service, which, for example, it might be a database of information, parts library. It could be something that does some processing. So maybe you've got an environmental impact application, and you've got an application which analyzes your inventory assembly, looks at all the materials used, and goes off to your web service to find out the environmental impact of those particular components, and perhaps suggests alternative components or materials you could use to reduce your environmental impact. So you could give them the application for free, but it doesn't work until they hook up to your web service. So they're paying for the web service as on subscription, and the application just, the add-in sits there in Inventor or Revit or whatever it is and accesses the web service.
So, Stephen, I'm going to ask you, can you check out, there's 2 questions in the question and answer area that I don't know exactly how to answer. One may be a typo, the other one I'm not sure.
Well, I think the URL is case sensitive, but I'll double check those later. We'll be emailing everybody who attended this presentation anyway, won't we, Jim?
Yes.
So if it needs correcting, I'll make sure it's corrected. So I had checked those URLs, but it's possible on Bitly that something broke. So that was just these short form URLs, and I'll make sure they're fixed anyway.
The second question is about, will there be one product listing that gives the customer a choice of rental or perpetual? I actually don't know that.
Actually, I don't off the top of my head. Maybe Hazel does.
Hazel, do you know if it'll be 2 different product listings or one product listing with purchase options?
No, I don't.
We'll find out.
Yeah, and then we have basically the same question: will it ever be possible to provide publishers with the ability to post an app as a trial, rental, and perpetual license from a single listing on the store, instead of having to submit and manage multiple entries in the store? And there's some things that it kind of has to be separate entries. I think there's 2 issues. One is you as a publisher having to submit multiple versions of the same application, and the other one is you as a customer actually, when they look at multiple versions of the same application, having them appear in the store as a single application with different options rather than different listings. We're working on that second one, and the first one is something that we want to be able to do eventually, but in some cases, like multi-language support and multi-version support where you have different installers, in some cases it's not really possible. You kind of have to submit the application again to submit your different language description, for example.
Okay, Steve, why don't we jump on? You can go ahead with tips and tricks. We're an hour in, and in 15
how are
minutes
we for time,
we're into a pumpkin.
How are we doing for time?
We're 1 hour in, and I think we've covered a lot of the new stuff, but we should go through the tips and tricks.
Okay.
We've really only got about 10 minutes to do that.
Okay, well, that's fine. So I just wanted to cover quickly some best practices, and if you've attended one of these presentations before, some of this might be a little bit familiar to you because we are covering some of the same material. I'm going to go through several topics, but I think the most important thing that you as a publisher can do is try and put yourself in the mindset of a customer. So I'm a programmer. I know that a lot of you out there are primarily programmers. You're not, first and foremost, you're a technical person. You're not a business person like me. And it's very easy to kind of get sucked into your own application and viewing it from, you know it intimately because you wrote it. You need to get out of that mindset when you're publishing on the Exchange store and really think, I'm a customer. I don't know anything about this guy. I don't know anything about his application. How can I present my application on the store in a way that will make him want to actually download it? Not even necessarily buying it, even free applications. If the application isn't well described, if the icons don't look nice, someone isn't even going to download a free application. And I think certainly for me, that's the hardest mindset change I can do, is going from a piece of code that I know intimately and viewing it from somebody who, who's not excited about programming and just wants to have something that will solve a problem. And if you get it right, then it really levels the playing field. You could be a one-man band working out of his basement, and you can outcompete a multinational conglomerate because your application works better and looks nicer than theirs does. So think like a customer. Make sure that you're giving them quality. Be realistic about the cost of the application. What is the value of the application to the customer, and give them options. If they don't know you, they're not going to spend $1,000 without trying anything first. So a lot of customers will actually download a free application from one publisher, and if they like it, they'll go back and see what else that publisher is selling. So think about having something very useful but free, which someone can use to convince themselves that, yeah, this is a guy I should do business with. So give them a chance to try, and even if you are selling applications, make sure you have a mix, free, trial, and paid as well. And Jim talked about what the appropriate mix is earlier on. The other best practices are just how you construct your application, the actual architecture. So wherever possible, we ask you to use this Autodesk bundle format, which I think most people are familiar with this now. It's basically a format where you can put all of your application files in a single folder with some XML file which explains to the Autodesk product how the application is supposed to be loaded. And then when that application is installed, the Autodesk product will just parse the XML files for all the apps installed and find out which ones it should install, and it just does it for you. No more messing around with demand load registry settings, no more playing around with weird and wonderful custom installer actions. And the beauty of using that format is if you do use that format, and by the way, if you don't use that format, our testing team will ask you if you can, because we are trying to standardize on that. But if you do use that format, we will also write the installer for you. So again, that's something that programmers normally really hate, is having to write this installer. It doesn't really add value in terms of the application. It just enables the user to install it. So we will do that for you if you follow the bundle guidelines. And the other one, of course, is do make sure as new product versions come out that you're quick to update. So we are receiving now questions from customers saying, hey, when's the 2015 version of this add-in going to be available? And we're having to contact publishers saying, well, when are you going to do it? Because someone wants to upgrade or someone wants to buy your new application. So going back to the look and feel, putting yourself in the mindset of the customer, remember that your icon is basically the first impression the customer has. If you go on the Exchange store, the thing that really catches the eye is the icon. And think about your experience on the Google store or the Apple store. Again, the first thing you see is the icon. And people actually compete on how their icons look. Everybody on the Apple store knows if they have a cruddy looking icon, no one's going to buy their app. And it's becoming the same on the Exchange store as well. So make sure you have a good looking icon, not too busy, ideally shows what the app does in some way. So here's some examples, Auto Draw, a nice little pencil, Vault Mirror, it's got this mirrored V, Pro Planner, Flow Planner, it's got these arrows to show it some kind of flow thing. And make them big and bold as well. It's really eye-catching if you get it right. And another example is to develop a theme. So, as well as making your icon stand out, if you develop a theme throughout your application range, if you've got multiple apps on the store, people will recognize your icon and go, oh, I like that other app. I just saw this, and this icon looks like it's from the same guy. Let's go and see what else he's published. And there are very good business reasons for doing these icons. We've actually found from download behavior that people are favoring the applications with the better icons. Even more importantly, unless if you don't have a good icon, we will ask you to change it, which will slow down the approval process. If you don't have an eye-catching icon, you are very unlikely to be made a featured application on the Exchange store. And being a featured application very, very significantly increases your visibility. We see at least 50% increase in download rates when we move an application to being a featured application. So it's important to have these good-looking icons. And just as a counterpoint, I've included some maybe not so good icons to give you an idea. So this first one, it's basically a box shot. You can't read the writing. You're kind of squinting at it saying, what does that say? It's not eye-catching. The second one, this kind of funny little eye. It's a nice icon, but it's too small. It's not using all of the space available. So if they just filled out the space, that would have been a great icon. And then the final one, again, when we've blown up these icons slightly, but when that's a lot smaller, that white on black is a little bit hard to read. So do think about those icons as the first point of contact with the customer, the thing to draw them into the rest of the application. So next thing I wanted to say is think about getting yourself on the storefront. So the best way to be on the storefront is actually to have a great app. It's to be, and particularly if you start to get a few good reviews, we will move your application to the featured apps list. If it's a new app, it's more likely to get featured. If you're very quick to update to a new release, you'll be one of the first people to go on a featured apps list for the new release. We do favour paid applications over free applications on featured apps. And of course, as I said before, if you don't have good icons, regardless of ticking the other boxes, you won't get on the featured apps list. And I think the final thing to say about that is if you have a promotion, if you're going to a conference or something like that where you want to advertise your application, you should let us know and we'll do our best to feature your application on the store homepage so that when you're at your conference, you can just tell people visiting your booth, oh, well, just go to the Exchange store and you'll see my icon right at the top of the featured apps list. It's a really nice marketing opportunity for you. The next stage of the interaction that the customer has, of course, is they've seen the icon, it draws them in. Then they look at the description for the app. And, this is another place where you need to remember that all the customer knows about your app is what you say about it on the store. So I kind of got a good and bad example of a description. The first one is explaining the benefits and the key features. It's using some formatting. It's providing links to a YouTube video so you can see more. It's also got links to trial versions as well. And then the second one is one sentence. And for me as a customer, if a publisher can only be bothered to write one sentence about his app, can I really be bothered to press that download button? Probably not. And then, of course, we have the screenshots. We're finding that customers do use the screenshots, so you can have up to 6. So make sure that you use them all. Make sure they're clear. They do expand out when someone clicks on them to fill the screen. So make them relevant, make them clear, make them look nice, and you'll find that you will increase adoption of your application. And use the help file as well. So when you submit your application, there are various fields that we use to automatically populate an online quick start help file. And I think the most important thing about this is actually the author company information that we've got information on here. This is a great place for you to tell the customer about your company, to give them some confidence that they should do some business with you. So do think about marketing yourself through the help files as well. And then finally, make sure that when someone does download your application, make sure that you follow up appropriately with them. So when you go to your My Upload section on Exchange, you'll see when you click on a particular app, you'll have this download number. And when you click on that number, it's actually a hyperlink, and that will give you a CSV file which lists everybody, the contact details of everybody who has ever downloaded your application. And you can use that to contact them. But be careful not to spam them. The last thing someone wants is to download someone from the store and then get loads of junk marketing. So ask them for feedback. Say, hey, how are you getting on with my application? Do you need any help? Do you have any feedback on improvements you would like me to make? Basically, what can I do to help you? And you can also, of course, look at those email addresses and try and cherry pick if you want to focus a little bit more of your marketing effort, look for people from their email domains who are from large companies and try and find a way to engage with them. So Jim, that's back to you, I think. You still there, Jim?
I've been muted. Sorry, Stephen.
There you are.
Thank you, Stephen. Man, you've been ripping through it. We're an hour and 13 minutes in. We're going to cut off here in 2 minutes. I hope folks here enjoyed the presentation. Again, we're recording this. We'll be sending an email out in the next few days with a link to the full recording, so you may want to refer back to what we said. We'll also provide the actual PowerPoint itself, which sometimes can be better than a recording for jumping around. And I know some of you may want to share some of this information for other people at your company. But maybe just as importantly, you have questions, just, drop us an email. If you have a complex question, your email can very easily say, hey, I kind of want to talk about, maybe it's around using the IPN, or maybe it's about, term licensing or pricing, or, you can just drop us an email and say, here's the topic. I want to talk to a real person and spend some time, having some, thoughtful time on what's the best approach. We're happy to do that. We love to be up close and personal with our publishers, with our software partners, so do not be bashful. We are going to be online here a wee bit longer after we finish up, using the chat session, so you can keep asking questions through chat, and we'll keep answering it until either the questions stop coming or we get cut off as we reach the end of this live meeting.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention as well, I did just check those convenience links for the blog postings I mentioned about the samples, and they do work, but they're case sensitive.
Oh, I don't know, Stephen. I just tried it. It didn't work for me.
Works fine for me.
But a Google search, Exchange Apps, licensing, IPN, GitHub, gets you right to where you want to go. I just tried it out. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording so I don't lose it if we get kicked out of this, but definitely keep asking questions. Okay, what do we got here? Stephen, are you looking at the Q&A?
Yeah, I'm just typing some responses.
Okay. I got Kevin Kochman here. Jim or Stephen?
Yeah, Kevin asked a question. It's me, Kevin. Stephen. I think you've got my email address already, stephen.preston@autodesk.com.
Stephen with a PH.
Yeah.
Or again, if you just send a question to appsinfo@autodesk.com, Stephen's actually on that distribution list, as am I. We'll quickly hear what you want or need. Thanks, Pim. And Marco.
Questions key for you, Jim.
Okay, if we publish apps on the Exchange website, is it possible to get a discount on our ADN membership? I'm glad you asked, but I'm sorry, the answer is no. Now, that said, we do discount ADN memberships for people who are startups, what I call folks who are not yet making money and are trying to build a new business. So you shouldn't be bashful kind of one-on-one asking us and telling us what your situation is, and we'll talk about it. We want to help. We don't want your ADN membership fee to get in the way of doing the right thing. So don't be bashful. Let's talk. Okay, does the system handle local sales tax so the publisher doesn't have to deal with these country specifics? So the current system through PayPal sort of does. It's actually on your side. It depends on your PayPal account. You can have the simple PayPal account, which is just an email address, but if you create a real commercial PayPal account, you can have PayPal take care of some of the tax issues. That said, we talked about this move to BlueSnap. BlueSnap has much more sophisticated tax handling capabilities. which we're looking forward to. But I will tell you, it doesn't totally get to the point you don't have to worry about it at all. You would end up going to your BlueSnap account and having to learn a bit on how taxes are handled and what they can do, what they can't, where you need to get involved. And it gets messier when we're talking about selling worldwide. So I think we're going to give you the capabilities to do a large amount of automation around taxes, but I don't want anybody to think this is ever going to be really simple. You need to understand some basics. A lot of questions coming in. There's Yap, you've got some questions about Vault and having several different apps. I suggest you drop us an email directly, because the best thing to do is to get you in contact with our Vault expert, who manages both the Exchange Apps Vault store in terms of packaging, and is also an expert in the Vault APIs, so they know what's possible. Says here, Glennis, if we bundle files, we need to abandon our licensing app. Are you providing other methods to lock the software? Again, Stephen went through some of the simple licensing methods we provided. Now, to be clear, some of that is not as bulletproof as you can get from other commercial providers of license management apps. We're not saying you have to abandon your existing licensing. We are saying you do need to think about the customer experience, because we are making it very easy for a customer to have 30, 40, 50 apps, like I suspect many of you have on your app phone. So if everybody has a very different licensing mechanism, this gets really hard on the customer to manage, which is why we're going to be providing more licensing capability over time. But I'll tell you, we will err on the side of ease for the customer, rather than trying to stop the 1 in 100 people who are pirates and are sophisticated pirates. Many of you may know Autodesk. We have a large team of licensing experts, and yet within a month of us releasing our new desktop apps, someone in China has released a key code generator or some other hack that has worked their way through our licensing. You really need to approach this. We need licensing that keeps the honest people honest, lets the honest people know when they have an issue, when they need to buy more licenses, so they don't accidentally steal. But the people who really want to be crooks, we're pretty convinced you can't stop them.
I think actually, Jim, Glennis might be asking, it sounds like the system she's using now is not compatible with our bundle format. So, we should talk about that with Glennis directly. So don't assume you can't publish your app just because that's an issue, Glennis. We ask, can you use the bundle format, and we prefer that. But if there's very good technical reasons why you can't, we can make the occasional exception.
So in the store today, about 10% of the apps do not use the bundle format. 90% do.
No, actually, Jim.
Okay, the customers like the bundle format. It's very clean and easy. It's the don't hold your breath install. When you give us an app that doesn't use the bundle format for the install, we're going to have a conversation with you to make sure we really understand why that's a necessity. There are a number of apps in the store today that do not use the bundle format, and some of them due to their licensing schemes or some other interesting technology they're using in their apps. The thing is, sometimes we get people who don't want to use the bundle format for not a really good reason. They could do it, and again, for the customer, using the bundle format long term, it's just a much better experience.
And Koa has a question as well. He's asking about, does Autodesk support creating a single installation package for AutoCAD 2007 to 2015? So the answer to that, Koa, is that the Exchange store is for apps from AutoCAD 2012 or for other products from the 2013 releases. And actually the bundle format, for which we will automatically create the installer for you, only became available in AutoCAD in the 2012 release and was only available in the other products from the 2013 release. So, you know, we don't mind you as a courtesy to customers providing older versions than AutoCAD 2012 in your application, but you will only be able to list your application on the store as compatible with 2012 onwards. And then Dwayne is asking how long does it normally take to review an Inventor app. The answer on any review is we try and review your application within 2 weeks. But the actual, in reality, the length of time it takes kind of depends on what we find when we review it. We typically find that somebody's first app submission takes a little bit longer because there's things like the bundle format and various other small things that you don't necessarily know to do, and we help you to change them. And then your follow-on applications usually are pretty straightforward because once you've done it once, it's very straightforward. So typically 2 weeks, but it can be longer if we find issues in your application.
Okay, I got a question here. Will there be a modification of the EULA, the end-user license agreement right now? It's about 10 pages long. It could be shorter and easier. I'll take a look at that. I will tell you the EULA we started with was the Autodesk EULA, which I think is 25 pages, and we managed to get it cut down to the 10 pages or so you see right now. I would love to have a EULA that's like 1 page. But there are some, when you're a really big company like Autodesk, it makes you a bit of a target for people with lawyers. So there is some issues there. But I get it, and I'll take a look at that.
Yeah, it's still shorter than the Apple agreement, I think.
I hear the Apple agreement's up near 40 pages, something crazy.
Yeah. So James Lavia is asking any clue what a bulk entitlement solution might be like. So yes, I think we'll be offering several options, one of which is likely to be allowing Active Directory, so someone in a large organization can add entitlements through their corporate Active Directory structure. Another option we want to provide is so that publishers can actually add entitlements themselves. So if you want to give a freebie to somebody or you want to add an entitlement to somebody, you can actually go in, you'll be able to go into a console, enter their email address, and then they will automatically be activated to be able to download and use your app. If you've got any suggestions of other ways you'd like it, then email us and we can look into it. So Tim Hopper.
Somebody wants some new store categories that show up in the left-hand sash, and they get the impression that's hard to do, and I'm like, hazel.wood@autodesk.com.
Well, it depends. I mean, what we don't want is a store category that covers one application on the store. So when there are categories that make sense to break out a large number of apps, we will do it, or if it's clearly an omission, that's fine. But if it's something very, very specific, we probably wouldn't do that if it's just covering a single app. But yeah, ask, tell us what the categories are, and we can see if it makes sense to add it. Brian Lockyer is asking, is there any info on the bundle format? So if you're talking about AutoCAD, it's actually in the AutoCAD help files. There's documentation. There's also lots of articles on our ADN dev blog. But again, if you email the apps info alias, we can forward you some links specifically. Fernando's asking any plans to improve Visual Studio to help with bundle generation. So basically, I think he's asking for a wizard. Right now, no. Will there be supporting Exchange Store for our custom EULA? Do you want to comment on that, Jim?
No, I'm kind of distracted by answering a few other questions.
So at the moment, the way of doing that is we recommend that on first run, your EULA should display then. So at the moment, we don't have any plans, but if you want to send me an email explaining what you need, we can certainly look into it. Larry Rios saying, do you recommend obfuscation for .NET Exchange Store applications? Not particularly, that's entirely up to you. I personally don't care whether a customer can decompile your application or not if you don't care. So if you care, then yes, obfuscate. If you don't care, then don't. So it's up to you.
All right, I guess that answered Joel's question too. Will there be support in the Exchange for our custom EULA? Yep, you can do that. Just bring the splash screen up upon initial install. It's up to you. Now I'll tell you, we don't encourage custom EULAs. Customers like the idea. They can read one EULA, and most of the apps use it. So when you add that custom EULA, you are making customers think, hey, this company may be hard to work with. Should I work with these folks? So be sure you're doing it for a really good reason. Maybe you've got something special in your technology where it's important to you, but don't do it just because you have something different.
So Roland Fry's asking, is there any way we could possibly tie a program to the type of license that's being used? For example, if it's a network license. Yeah, so that's an interesting one. So that's basically asking to tie it to the kind of Autodesk product license. And I would say not now, but possibly in the future, Roland. I mean, particularly what I would love to see is to be able to tie in add-in subscription, so apps on the Exchange store could actually be put in sync with a product subscription. And you know, I specifically use the word I because that's not me committing to any particular plans by Autodesk. But it is certainly something that would be really nice to see. So I'd love to get an email from you explaining in more detail what you'd like to do, because it's certainly something that I've been thinking about, and it's you know, it is a possibility. So let us know more details.
Okay.
So Tim Hoffler, Microsoft's announced native.NET apps for their store to prevent recompiling should be fine for Exchange apps too. So I'm not quite sure what it is that Microsoft has announced, Tim, but if you'd like to send me an email with more detail, I can follow up with you afterwards.
Man, a lot of questions today.
Well, that's good. Worst thing is to do a presentation and not get any questions. So I think that's it now, Tim. We don't seem to get...
we're done. Any other questions from anyone? Going once, going twice. Wow, we're an hour and a half in. I'm surprised Microsoft hasn't cut us off yet, or AT&T. Okay, with that, I'd just like to thank everyone. I'd also like to thank Stephen for the help. Those of you who are current publishers, we really appreciate your working with us on this journey we're going on. I'd like to thank Hazel, who's in the background here and deals with many of you who are existing publishers, for managing the store. And for those of you who don't have an app in the store right now, I encourage you, jump on in. There is a learning curve. The first app you submit, there will be some back and forth between us. No different, somebody told me, you submit an app to the Apple Store, 90% get rejected first time out with a list of things that need to be addressed and fixed. We're really no different. But I will tell you, at the end of the process, you will end up with better apps, and you will end up with some surprising new customers that you'll be able to grow your business with, whether that's through free apps that you create good relationships, whether that's through paid apps through the store, or whether leveraging what we're doing around term capabilities, so you can really effectively sell large apps through Exchange. And with the customers feeling really good and safe about it, no matter where you're located and how big a company you are. Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye.